Help support AMTV by becoming a patron, an AMTV staff member, and following us over on Twitter.
Hi there guys, it's Adam Martyn here, and welcome back to another video, and we seemingly have our lineup for Eurovision 2025, or do we? The thing is, every year there's a cut-off point when countries have to submit their applications for Eurovision to the European Broadcasting Union, the EBU, the body that organises the entire thing. That deadline was set to be Sunday, September the 15th, 2024. Now, I'm recording this a few days after, on Tuesday the 17th of September, so in theory, we've had that deadline passed, so the countries that have confirmed are the ones who are going to take part. But if we're going by the ones that have publicly confirmed, at the minute, we've only got 31 countries. And if that's the case, that means it could potentially be the lowest Eurovision participation in over 20 years. We wouldn't have seen it that low since 2003, I think. There's several questions to get into it. There is a grace period until October the 11th where countries can withdraw without receiving a financial penalty. And of course, there is the possibility that several other nations have indeed submitted applications. They just haven't publicly confirmed it. The EBU itself or the Eurovision socials pages will eventually post a participants list. That tends to come a little bit later. It's just funny to see on the actual cut-off date how many have publicly come forward and said, yeah, we're taking part. So what I wanted to do, I wanted to briefly go through the 31 nations that have said, yes, we're in, talk about how they performed last year, what I'd be hoping for them this year, and then also touch on the nations who definitely played last year, haven't publicly confirmed this year, and talk about the prospects of that. So kicking off, we've got Albania. Now, Albania didn't qualify this year in 2024, which I thought was a great shame. I actually really enjoyed Titan, sung by Besa, and you know, I would have loved to have heard it sung in the original Albanian. I believe it was changed to be sung in English, but hopefully, you know, next year they'll send something in Albanian that will be just as catchy, because 2023 Duhja, like honestly, that song deserves so much more than we all gave it. Austria, now they had We Will Rave, which was such a banger. That was one of my favourite songs of the contest, and it didn't do very well on the night. It had to go last as well, but I mean, fun party songs. The Austrians recently have been sending absolute bangers, so that may continue going forward. Azerbaijan, their song this year definitely grew on me. I remember when I first heard it, I didn't really vibe with it. Same with the live performance. It was only weirdly after the contest I actually started to get it. I started to get into it. And again, like Albania, I enjoy it. In fact, with most countries, I enjoy it when they send songs that are performed in their own language as opposed to just English. Because yes, English is the language I understand. I am, of course, an ignorant British person, but I enjoy hearing songs in different languages, so hopefully they'll continue that trend. Belgium, now I remember they didn't qualify this year, and a lot of people seemed upset by that. I wasn't really over the moon about the song anyway before the party is over. I don't think I really saw what a lot of people were getting at, but I hope next year they come back with something like we've had a few years ago, like Because of You by Gustav, just something fun, something that's going to get people going, something that will help them qualify, quite frankly. Cyprus, now they're in a good position that they've already announced their artist for next year, which is Theo Evan. I don't know anything about Theo, I don't know any of his back catalogue or anything like that, but they've gotten in early announcing their artist, and at the time of recording, it's the only artist that's been confirmed. So Cyprus, they must know what's up. We don't know the song or anything like that, we just have the artist, but that's exciting nonetheless. This year with Laya, I enjoyed it, but it did feel, to some extent, it did feel fairly cookie cutter, even though, you know, the performers did really well, the routine I really liked, the staging was really cool, but it did feel a bit like cookie cutter pop, so maybe Cyprus needs to try and break free from that a little bit. They have had success with it in the past, but I think you can only keep going with the same formula for so long, so something wildly different would be cool to see. Then we have Czechia, and I'm so glad that they've confirmed participation, because they were one nation that for a couple months after this year's contest, it was up in the air as to whether they would compete in 2025. They were being very vague, like the statements around their participation were very vague, so really happy to see that they're coming back. They didn't qualify in 2024. Pedestal's grown on me, the song that they sent, and I hope next year they don't shy away from being a bit more experimental. Again, the last few years we've had like rock. My Sister's Crown in 2023 was ace. That's been one of my favorites of the decade so far, so I hope Czechia don't lose the sort of experimentally edge they've been going for, because it's really cool to see. Denmark, of course. It's funny because we stayed in Denmark, me and Becca, when we went this year, and there was no promotion for Eurovision whatsoever. It seems like the Danes aren't bothered about the contest, and yet they keep coming back every single year. Now, they didn't qualify. They sent Sand, and, you know, it was a decent song. I still think maybe perhaps a different singer with a different range. They could have done that song in a much different way, but you know, as it stands, it didn't qualify. And I think next year, to try and break their streak, they just need to send something maybe like, you know, Czechia, a bit more experimental, a bit more out there, just to see if it pays them dividends. Estonia, now this was, I think, the most recent public confirmation of participation. I enjoyed Estonia this year. They definitely went for the more goofy route. It was a really fun song with the really fun dance. Estonia, I think, again, hearing something in their own language. I know they tend to send stuff in English, but I'd really love to hear something in Estonian or one of the languages that's spoken there. I think that'd be really nice. We've got Finland, Windows 95 man represented this year. And I just, you know, you can't not love this guy. It seems like they definitely continued in the Karja mold, something a bit wild, although I'd argue Windows 95 man was definitely a lot more goofy, but still very enjoyable. Now, it didn't pay the same dividends as it did in 2023, and it would be interesting for Finland, I think, to go in a rapidly different direction for this year. I know they tend to do their national final, so it is mainly up to the public and the judges to decide, but whilst it is cool sending the fun, goofy, silly stuff, it would be nice to see a complete different change of pace, or maybe something that's like very, sort of like Karja, but in terms of musical style, like very hard, dancey, electronic, you know, something like that. We have France, one of the big five. Now, Slimane this year, of course, absolutely smashed it with his ballad Mon Amour. It was one of the most beautiful songs of this year's contest. The French do very well at that. But again, I'd like to see them try a bit more experimental stuff. I know they did this a few years ago and it didn't really work out, but, you know, keep pushing the boundaries. You never know what's going to land. Georgia, Firefighter this year, yeah, definitely grew on me. You could argue, is it cookie cutter pop to a degree, but the vocals on Nutsa, I mean, just blew me away, especially live as well. She absolutely smashed it. It would be nice to see Georgia either sort of expand on that mold or just go something completely wild and off the cuff. We have Germany as well, who did a lot better than I think they thought they would, because they haven't had the best streak recently, but Isaac came 12th with Always on the Run, which, you know, has grown on me. I do enjoy the song. Did I think it deserved 12th? Not necessarily, but for Germany, I just hope they can continue this streak of not coming last. Greece. So they had Marina Satti, who performed Zari, which was one of the best songs to hear live, I think. I'll actually be going to see her with Becca in concert in October, so that'll be really fun to hear more of her back catalogue. But yeah, Greece, I think continuing that mold, sort of the very, as they call it, like ethno-pop, you know, something that feels very Greek or very of the region. And if it's done like that, as it was this year, I think it'll do very well. Iceland, again, another last-minute participation. Theirs was up in the air. They didn't qualify this year. We all love Hera Björk, of course. We all adore her as a Eurovision icon. Definitely wasn't the right song this year. Scared of Heights. It just didn't have that thing to push it over the edge into the final. Again, like they have done in their past, it would be nice to see Iceland go a bit more wacky. I'm not saying it has to be silly or goofy, but just something that's very different, something that's not necessarily cookie cutter pop, as you could argue Scared of Heights was, just to see that variety that we know they're capable of. Israel are back, and of course, yes, this is the contentious one. I don't want to get too much into it here. Yes, they are coming back, and that is probably going to cause because, let's face it, the stuff that's going on over there in that region is probably still going to be happening by the time the next contest is about. And it's going to cause a lot of controversy, as it did this year. I don't think we're going to see the same broadcaster rally of, oh, we won't take part, because in the end, they did all take part. Personally, I mean, I said it in my ranking video, which you can go and watch if you want a more in-depth look at what I thought of each of the songs this year. I wasn't an overly massive fan of the song anyway, and live I didn't think it landed all that well for me personally. So it'll be interesting to see what they send next year, but yeah, I do think it is, with everything going on, it is going to bring about its fair share of controversy. Italy. Now, Angelina Mango represented this year, and again, like Marina, me and Becca are going to see Angelina in concert later this year, which will be cool. But I think everyone hyped this one up so much, didn't they? And it had a lot of promise, but it'd be great to see Italy, again, continue to send stuff in Italian because it's a gorgeous language to hear in song. But I think in terms of structure of song, maybe more like a Måneskin, not necessarily like rock, but something more out there, something challenging, not necessarily cookie cutter pop, like I'm saying a lot, but there is a lot of it at the contest. Latvia, it wasn't it nice to see Don's qualify, bless his little heart. whilst the song has grown on me a little bit, I do think Latvia really need to try and push the boat out. I think Don's got through because partly he is a great vocalist, like his voice was really good. But I think in terms of just a song in general, and it can be a simple song. I'm not saying every entry has to be complicated. Cookie Cutter Pop does have its place in the contest, but I think with Latvia, before this year, their qualification rate was not good, so it'd be interesting to see that push the boat out. Lithuania. Now, Sylvester Belt this year, oh, bless him. I really wanted a higher placement for Lithuania this year because I really liked the song Luktelk, but it didn't quite happen. It was around the middle of the board. But again, hearing a song in Lithuanian where in several years past they've chosen to send stuff in English, keep that going. Send more stuff in your own language because it sounds gorgeous. And yeah, just that sort of style that Lithuania have been sort of sending the last few years, continue that, expand on that, but please make it be in your own language because it's brilliant. Luxembourg, the great returnee last year. For me personally, I was disappointed with what Luxembourg sent last year because I just didn't think it was very good. That's no slight on Tali, the singer, or anything like that, but it just, Fighter wasn't really my sort of song, and I think I ranked it as my 37 out of 37 of like the whole Eurovision ranking for this year. So they are coming back next year, which is great. Nice to see they're not just one, they're coming back for one then dipping. I just hope whatever they send is just more interesting than Fighter. That's it, really. Malta. Now, Malta in the last few years hasn't been doing too well on the qualification rate either. And this year, I thought it was obvious. There are so many people out there who defend Loop, the song. And, like, it wasn't a bad song. Like, the studio version doesn't sound too bad. But when your whole performance, when 3/4 of it is just dance break and the vocals aren't necessarily on point either, to me, it was sort of a no-brainer that it didn't qualify. So I really want Malta next year to stop this trend of what they've been sending the past few years. Again, what in my view is very straightforward pop, doesn't feel very risky, and yes, the dance was risky, but I mean the song itself didn't feel like a huge risk. It didn't feel all that engaging to me, but I know a lot of people love it, which is fair enough. Montenegro, our first and maybe only country that have announced their return after a few years. They haven't played since 2022, so a 2-year break. I really hope they come back with something strong, something really memorable. They've done that in the past with some of their other entries. Like Luxembourg, I hope they don't come back with a song, to me at least, that feels very empty, that feels very vapid, that doesn't really excite me. I hope that's not what they send, and it'd be really great for them if they could qualify from the semi-finals next year, because I think they've only done it like 2 or 3 times in their whole participation history. And I can't mention Montenegro without mentioning Euro Nero. Don't be skeptic, hermetic, pathetic, analphabetic. Norway, yes, our last place people this year are. This was such a shame. I don't think the song deserved last place whatsoever. I thought it deserved to be a lot higher. I love, again, sort of embracing your nation's history, the folklore, and the different range of, like, the instruments, the soundscapes. That all really clicks with me. I love Eurovision for songs like that. I know not everyone does, and clearly the public didn't because it came dead last. But I hope that doesn't deter them. I don't want to see Norway next year send something, again, like I was saying about Malta and some of the others. I don't want them to send something that's very safe, that doesn't challenge them, that doesn't excite me or many others watching the contest. I just make it exciting, make it different, because they're good at it, Norway. You're really good at it. Portugal. Now, I really adored the song Portugal sent this year. A beautiful ballad, very minimal staging, perfect vocals, and absolutely deserved the 12 points it got from our juries, because we recognize good music for once. And again, next year, I'm not saying it has to be a ballad, but something in Portuguese, yet again, another beautiful language to hear in song. Just something that represents their nation, something that stands out. Because if anything, this year, Portugal showed that you don't have to have the most fancy staging to make an impact. And I hope that carries through into whatever they do, and other nations do, for next year. San Marino. Some people were speculating that they might not have taken part because, again, they haven't qualified for the last few years, but it seems that they are, and I would like them to qualify. They're such a small nation. It's just nice to see them in the final when they do qualify. In terms of what they send, I think they flip-flop between very bland, generic pop stuff. I mean, last year, yes, Megara was definitely a bit more out there, and clearly it just didn't land at the time with the general, like the juries or the audiences or whatever. But keep being experimental. Don't just send us another pop song sung by like a 50-year-old guy. Just send something that stands out, that's different, that's unique, and it'll be what it'll be. Then we have Serbia, a beautiful ballad with Ramunda this year. I really enjoyed that. That was one of my favourites. And again, singing in Serbian, great language. And I know so far I've kind of been like, oh, don't repeat yourself. But I'd actually love to hear another ballad in Serbian. Not obviously in the exact same mould as Ramunda, but I'd like to see something sung in Serbian in a ballad sort of format, because it is genuinely beautiful to hear. Slovenia. Now, I'll say it before and I'll say it again. These guys got shafted. Like, they absolutely got done dirty. They deserved a lot better than what they got this year. Raven and the song Veronica. For me and Becca, this was a great one to watch. Loved the vocal, loved the performance. Everything about it was just so bloody cool. And they got shafted. So I'd love to see Slovenia do a lot better this year. Again, I think something in that mold, that Raven sort of style that's a bit ethereal, a bit out there with a strong vocal and an interesting routine, because there wasn't that much staging per se, but the choreography was really engaging, I thought. So please keep expanding on that formula. Slovenia. Spain, another Big Five member. Nebulosa definitely deserved better. You know, Thora, I really vibe with that. I think everyone did, especially if you were there live, as me and Becca were. But yeah, Spain next year, I think there's a risk with Big Five countries that they play it really safe, you know, just because they pay to be in the final. There's not necessarily a risk of not qualifying. So we've had it from all of them in different years where they've played it really, really safe. I'd argue Thora wasn't as safe as it could have been, which was nice to see. So I just hope that Spain, again, don't fall into this trap of, oh, well, you know, we haven't won, so we're just going to send something really generic. Sweden, the hosts last year. Now, of course, they always tend to do well. I think anything other than a top 10 placement for them is considered a failure, which is quite funny when you think about it. I mean, will they send another, you know, pop song as they've tend to do? Because as much as I love, you know, Tattoo, it's a great pop song. And Unforgettable by the Twins, who we are seeing next year, by the way. That's a great pop song, but it is just a pop song. It'd be really cool to see something really out there, something really alternative for Sweden, something we wouldn't expect from them. Now, is that going to happen? I don't think so. I think they've got this formula down to a T with the Melody Festivalen as well and all that sort of stuff. So if they send another pop song, then great, but it'd be really cool to see something wildly out of the box for Sweden. Switzerland, the host this year, and the winners. Now, with Eurovision hosts, you know, especially since the new millennium, we haven't had consecutive winners, like the same country win 2 years in a row. The last time that happened was Ireland back in the 90s. So, and partly I think it's because the cost of hosting Eurovision now, I always get the impression that host nations don't want to win because they don't want to host it for a second time. Now, that doesn't mean host nations have sent songs that aren't good. I mean, you know, Unforgettable this year from Sweden, as I said, really good pop song. It came 9th, still got a top 10 finish, but I always thought it was never going to be a winner. And to be honest, I think the broadcasters knew that as well. So it'll be very interesting to see what Switzerland put forward. You know, will it be as game-changing, as groundbreaking as the Code was? Probably not. Is it going to be completely generic? I'd like to think not. I'd like to think it'd still be interesting, but I'm going to go with my gut and say, like in years past, I don't think they're going to send something that is going to set the world alight and is going to be a winner. We have Ukraine. Now, Ukraine, of course, do very well in Eurovision. Still the only country to have never not qualified from the semi-finals since it was introduced. That is a very impressive track record, if you ask me. So we've had all sorts from them. I really ended up liking. I know I ranked it low at the time, but I've really grown on Teresa and Maria, their song that they sent this year. So again, I'd love to see another song sung in Ukrainian, maybe exploring more of like their history or their folklore, or just something in Ukrainian, basically, because let's face it, they're going to do well, they'll probably qualify, but if it's a good song, then they deserve to. And finally, the United Kingdom. Yes, us. Now, as much as I like Ollie Alexander, I don't think Dizzy was the song. Again, I think people at the BBC or whoever, the committee that organised it, I think given the star power of Ollie Alexander, I'd argue we maybe got a bit complacent. And I think a lot of fans did too. I remember seeing a lot of chatter when it was announced saying, oh, well, we've basically won then because we've got someone who's had hits on the chart. It doesn't work like that. Dizzy had promise, but for me, it didn't really go anywhere as a song. And whilst the staging was really cool, I feel like it wasn't enough to sort of take it even further. So please, next year, please send something that is actually stand out, that's not just, you know, mainstream pop. Send something wildly different. We're already paying to be in the final. What have we got to lose? So those are the 31 countries who have publicly confirmed that they're in. So who's missing? Well, one that hasn't publicly confirmed is Croatia, which is a big shock because, of course, this year was their best performance ever. They came second, Baby Lasagna and Rim Tim Taggy Dim. Some would argue it deserved to win. That would have been my winner personally, but for them not to publicly confirm it yet is quite bizarre. I'm going to take a hunch and say they are in. They have agreed with it with the EBU and we're just waiting for the confirmation, but I was just surprised to hear that it wasn't publicly announced. If they aren't in it, I'd be very surprised. I think that'd be a shock that the runner-up didn't want to take part next year. Another nation that hasn't publicly confirmed yet is Poland. Now, Poland's had this whole speculation around it, the whole JoJo Siwa thing. If you don't know, JoJo Siwa got big on YouTube when she was a young kid, and now she, I believe, makes pop songs and stuff like that. She's an American, but somehow there was this rumor that swirled that she was representing Poland for Eurovision. Now, she did go to Poland, and she indeed fueled those rumors herself, saying she was having meetings and stuff. The broadcaster eventually came out and said, we haven't spoken to JoJo Siwa. This isn't happening as of yet. They haven't made any decisions. That was made at the start of this month, September. So in the last 2 weeks, they've either decided, hey, we are in, or we aren't. Because Poland this year, lest we forget, they didn't qualify. The Tower by Luna, I thought that was right that it didn't qualify. No shade on her, but it just wasn't enough for me to warrant a place in the final. But maybe that has made the broadcaster think, well, if we haven't qualified, maybe we won't take part next year. Another nation that hasn't publicly confirmed is Armenia. Now, they did really well this year. They came 8th, top 10 placement. Ladaniva had such a great song in Jacko, such a great party vibe, such a great atmosphere. Again, I think it'd be a great shame if they aren't taking part this year. I'm not quite sure what the reasons behind that would be if they aren't, but they haven't publicly confirmed yet. But again, like Croatia, given their good placement this year, I'm going to go on a whim and say I'd like to think that they'll be coming back for 2025. Another nation that is yet to publicly confirm is Moldova. Now, Moldova is one of the smallest countries that takes part in Eurovision. Obviously, taking part in general is quite a cost. Every nation in the world has their own problems going on right now as well that they're having to funnel money into. So naturally, in the grand scheme of things, Eurovision becomes not that important, and that's valid. So with Moldova, I don't know if they're going to take part this year. This is one where, because of course they didn't qualify for the final either. So like Poland, I'm starting to think, is it a mix of not qualifying, but also the financial costs as well? Are they going to sit this year out? It'd be a great shame if they did, because Moldova sends some absolutely wonderful stuff. They always have done in their history, but I don't know. The longer we go without a public confirmation, I'm starting to think maybe they ain't going to take part. Now, a huge one is Ireland. Ireland is the joint most victorious nation in Eurovision alongside Sweden, 7 wins. This year was their best victory in decades. Bambi Thug, who came 6th. That is the first top 10 placement Ireland have had in forever. Me and Becca actually saw Bambi Thug in Manchester recently. They were amazing. They absolutely crushed it. But again, best result, but Ireland was also the source of a lot of controversy. Bambi was definitely one of the most vocal participants in response to all of the controversies going on at this year's contest. So I don't know whether that's impacted the broadcaster's decision to take part. I know they've mentioned that they're looking for a new format to choose their artists compared to what they've got. But again, for one of the most prolific nations, the most victorious nation, or joint most victorious, to not have publicly confirmed that they're in yet, slightly worrying. I'd like to think Ireland will come back. It's just one of those we haven't had public yet, but I was a bit worried that we didn't have a public confirmation from them. I'm not going to lie. Another big one is Australia. Now, Australia have been playing for about 10 years now, and I think they've carved their place. They tend to send really memorable, really great stuff. They didn't qualify this year, however. I think that's only the second or third time they haven't qualified for the final, and I really love the message of the song, but I can sadly see why it didn't land enough to qualify, which is a real shame. I don't know how that's going to impact them participating next year. I don't know if they have to negotiate every year with the EBU, like the special deal that they can take part and stuff like that. But I don't know. I just think we've all gotten so used to Australia taking part now. And again, they do tend to send really great stuff that if they do drop out next year on the 10th year or the 10th anniversary of them taking part, we'd be losing something. But of course, the big one is the Netherlands. Now, I've talked before ad nauseum about the situation this year with Joost Klein, the artist. I don't need to go into that again. I've made a few videos on that. You can go and check out if you want to learn more about it. As far as we know, things might be looking up. The deadline was September the 15th. However, Avratros, the broadcaster, had negotiated with the EBU for an extension. So they were granted an extension until November the 1st in terms of confirming its participation. Now, the broadcaster said they were thankful that the EBU granted them this. They were grateful for it. The language in general, when you read the articles, when you read the snippets that have come out, the language in general is becoming a lot more positive than it was a few months ago. That's not saying that they definitely will take part. There's every chance that they might walk away and go, nah, forget it. But I'm a bit more hopeful now that the Netherlands will come back. I had speculated that they might sit this year out almost in protest and come back for 2026. But with an extension granted, obviously we're not going to hear from them until very late. And of course that will delay the official announcement of the full participants list. But I'm definitely more hopeful of Netherlands coming back now than I was a month or two ago. There are other countries as well who didn't take part last year who have been the source of speculation. Romania, for example, when they were asked, they said they haven't made a decision on participation. It'd be great to see them back. It's great to see many nations come back when they do. But at the minute, the only returnee is Montenegro. So we'll have to see when that official list drops. In conclusion, even though I think this just tells us, even when we have the official deadline to register for application, they don't have to publicly confirm it. Of course they don't. The official confirmation from the EBU will come later. It's definitely going to come after November the 1st because we need to see what the Netherlands decides regarding their participation. But I do worry, though, that we're still going to see the lowest amount of countries taking part in the last 20 years. In the 2024 contest, we had 37, which has been like that's been the lowest amount for a while in different versions of the contest. I think the last one before that was in 2004. I think there was 36 countries there, and before that there was a lot less. It was like the 26 or whatever, and we had the relegation system and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know what it is. I mentioned it before, but I've got this horrible feeling we are going to have less than 37 countries take part this year. And that is what it is. You know, there's all these reasons. It could be financial, it could be political, it could be various reasons preventing countries from taking part. But I do think that would be a shame to see such a drop-off. You know, we've got past 30, 31 publicly confirmed. That is good. But I wonder where that number's going to stop. I'm wondering maybe if we get to 35, that'd be pretty good given the circumstances. But we'll have to wait and see. But that is all for this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please do leave a like on it because it really does help us out. And subscribe to the channel as well because we'd love to have you aboard. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Which of the countries that haven't announced yet do you think will come back? Which do you think won't come back? Let me know your reasoning down in the comments below. In the meantime, I've been Martyn from AMTV. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Thank you to our patrons for helping to support the show, and a special thank you to Macra, Bruce Danton, Derek Chambers, Shaun Knock, Daud Khan, Liam De-Maine, Trev Hughes, Ajmac 200017, Deck, Evan Hart 41, Jen, Traffi, Tim Ripley, Mr. Eurovision 1986, Ted Elliott, Marnanel Thurman, John Wakefield, Kieran Bolton, and 40-something Manchild, our AMTV staff members.